Are you joking, Daniel? I stared at my phone, rereading the text message from my son. Mom, I think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. We want to avoid any confusion or awkward situations. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 48, I never imagined I'd be uninvited from my own son's wedding because I looked too young. The text had come just 3 weeks before the ceremony, after months of helping with preparations and paying for half the venue. I called Daniel immediately, my hands shaking as I pressed his number. When he answered, his voice was distant, formal, a tone I'd never heard from him before. Mom, Sarah's just concerned about the photos and how it might look. You know, with you looking more like a sister than a mother. He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Sarah, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, had always been polite but cold since she and Daniel got engaged. Now everything was starting to make sense. The way she'd excluded me from dress shopping, the bridal shower I wasn't invited to, the rehearsal dinner that suddenly became immediate family only. Daniel, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you when I was 19. Just because I take care of myself doesn't mean I should be excluded from your wedding. My voice cracked despite my attempts to stay calm. Sarah thinks it might be uncomfortable for her family. They're very traditional, and with you looking so, well, you know. Plus, there's the whole social media aspect. She's worried about how the photos will be received. I sank onto the couch, feeling like all the air had been punched from my lungs. So I'm being uninvited because I don't look old enough? Because I might embarrass Sarah on Instagram? Mom, please don't make this difficult. Sarah's really stressed about making everything perfect. Perfect. The word echoed in my head. I thought about all the times I'd seen Sarah post about her perfect wedding planning, her perfect engagement photos, her perfect future family. Somehow, a youthful-looking mother-in-law didn't fit into that perfect picture. I pay for half the venue, I reminded him quietly. We'll pay you back, he said quickly. Too quickly. Sarah's parents offered to cover it. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a sudden decision. They planned this, waited until everything was arranged, and now they were pushing me out. But why? There had to be more to this than just my appearance. Later that evening, my phone lit up with a text from Sarah. I hope you understand, Olivia. We just want what's best for everyone. And don't worry about the venue payment. My parents are handling everything now. I stared at her message, noticing how she dropped the mom she'd been calling me for the past year. Something felt off about all of this. Sarah's parents weren't wealthy. They'd been clear about their budget limitations during the initial planning. So how could they suddenly afford to cover my portion of the venue? I called my best friend, Lisa, who had been helping with some of the wedding arrangements. Something's not adding up, I told her. Sarah's parents couldn't even afford the flower arrangements last month, and now they're covering the venue. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Olivia, there's something you should know. I didn't want to tell you because I couldn't believe it myself, but I overheard Sarah talking to her mother at the cake tasting last week. She said something about once the papers are signed and the house will be ours. My blood ran cold. The house. My house. The one I'd inherited from my grandmother. The one I'd mentioned possibly signing over to Daniel as a wedding gift. But I hadn't told Sarah about that. I'd only discussed it with Daniel in private. There's more, Lisa continued. Sarah's been telling people you had work done, implying that's why you look young for your age. She's been painting this picture of you as some vain, superficial woman who cares more about appearances than family. I felt sick to my stomach. All those times Sarah had complimented my appearance, asked about my skincare routine, my exercise habits. She'd been gathering ammunition, building a narrative that would make my exclusion from the wedding seem reasonable rather than cruel. But as I sat there, processing everything, my phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was from Daniel's cousin Amy, who worked at the local courthouse. Olivia, you need to see something. Can you meet me tomorrow? It's about Sarah, and you're not going to like what I found. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. What else was Sarah hiding? And more importantly, what was she planning to do once she legally became part of our family? The next morning, I met Amy at a quiet coffee shop near the courthouse. Her face was tense as she slid a folder across the table. I shouldn't be showing you this, she said quietly, but I ran a background check on Sarah. Olivia, this is her third engagement in 5 years, and there's a pattern. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were court records, property documents, and newspaper clippings. Each told a similar story. Sarah had been engaged to wealthy men, all with close relationships to their mothers. In every case, family disputes erupted just before the wedding. Look at this, Amy pointed to a document. Her last fiancé's mother signed over her house 2 weeks before the wedding. A month later, Sarah broke off the engagement but kept the property through legal loopholes. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. And the one before that? Same story, different asset, a vacation home in Colorado. Sarah claimed emotional distress after the breakup and threatened legal action. The family settled to avoid scandal. I thought about my house, my grandmother's house, and how close I'd come to signing it over to Daniel. Does my son know about any of this? Amy shook her head. I doubt it. She's careful. Changes her name slightly each time, moves between states. Most of this wouldn't show up in a regular background check. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Olivia, I hope you're not upset about the wedding. I'm just trying to protect Daniel from any embarrassment. By the way, have you thought more about that wedding gift you mentioned? The audacity made my blood boil. She was still trying to manipulate the situation, even now. There's something else, Amy said, pulling out another document. Sarah's parents filed for bankruptcy 3 months ago. They couldn't afford a coffee maker, let alone a wedding venue. Then where's the money coming from? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. Credit cards, loans, all in Daniel's name. She's been adding herself to his accounts, taking out new cards. The spending started right after the engagement. I felt like I was going to be sick. My son wasn't just being manipulated, he was being set up for financial ruin. The wedding's in 2 weeks, I said. What am I supposed to do? Daniel won't believe me if I just tell him. Amy smiled grimly. That's why I brought this. She pulled out a USB drive. Security footage from the courthouse. Sarah came in last week with another man, discussing property transfers and prenuptial agreements. She didn't know I was working that day, or that our new security system records audio. I stared at the small drive that could blow Sarah's perfect plan apart, but I knew I had to be careful. If I moved too quickly, she'd find a way to spin it, to make me look like the villain. There's one more thing, Amy added. The wedding venue? Sarah's secretly moving it to a different location. Only certain guests are being told. I'm guessing you can figure out who's not on that list. It all made sense now, the sudden insistence on paying me back for the venue, the weird excuses about the rehearsal dinner. Sarah wasn't just trying to exclude me. She was planning to have the wedding without me even knowing where it was. I took a deep breath, feeling surprisingly calm. Okay, I said. Here's what we're going to do. I spent the next hour outlining my plan to Amy. It wasn't enough to just expose Sarah. We needed to make sure Daniel saw the truth for himself. And I knew exactly how to do it. As I left the coffee shop, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Just wanted to check. You're okay with not coming to the wedding, right? Daniel's really hoping you won't make this difficult. We hate for this to affect your relationship with him. I smiled at my phone, thinking about the USB drive in my purse and the plan taking shape. Of course, I texted back, I understand completely. I just want what's best for Daniel. Sarah's reply was immediate. You're so understanding. I knew you'd see it my way. And about the house. I left her message unread. Let her think she'd won. In 2 weeks, on what should have been my son's wedding day, everyone would learn exactly why Sarah didn't want me there. And it had nothing to do with how young I looked. The day of the wedding arrived, bright and clear. Thanks to Amy, I knew exactly where the real ceremony was being held. A small chapel on the outskirts of town, not the venue Sarah had originally booked. I sat in my car, watching guests arrive. Sarah had invited everyone who mattered for her plan. Daniel's business partners, our extended family, and anyone who might have influence over future assets. She had even invited my elderly Aunt Helen, who owned significant property she had always promised to Daniel. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into the chapel. The gasps were immediate. Olivia. Sarah's mother sputtered. You're not supposed to be here. Sarah, still in the bridal room, must have heard the commotion. She came rushing out, her white dress swishing dramatically. What are you doing? You can't be here. I smiled calmly. Actually, I can. You see, I own this chapel. The color drained from Sarah's face. What? I bought it last week. Interesting thing about property records. They are public. just like bankruptcy filings, credit card applications, and court records from 2 other states. Daniel stepped forward, confusion written across his face. Mom, what are you talking about? Show them, I said to Amy, who was already setting up a projector. The security footage from the courthouse played on the chapel wall. There was Sarah, sitting with an unknown man, discussing her plans in detail. Once I get the house signed over, we'll proceed with our original arrangement. Sarah's voice rang clear through the speakers. His mother is the only obstacle, but I've convinced Daniel she's too embarrassing to have at the wedding. Once she's out of the picture. The footage continued, revealing every detail of Sarah's scheme. The planned asset transfers, the credit cards in Daniel's name, even her agreement with a mystery man to sell my house once it was in her possession. Turn it off, Sarah screamed, but it was too late. Daniel stood frozen, staring at the screen. The credit cards, the loans, that's why you insisted on joint accounts right after the engagement. Sarah's perfect mask cracked. Danny, I can explain. Like you explained to your last 2 fiancés, I asked quietly. Amy started distributing copies of the court records to the stunned guests. 3 engagements in 5 years, I continued. 3 families nearly bankrupted. 3 properties stolen or extorted. Did you really think no one would discover the pattern? The chapel erupted into chaos. Sarah's parents tried to slip out but were stopped by Daniel's cousin, a local police officer. We should probably discuss those fraudulent loan applications, he said. Daniel walked over to me, his face pale. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have known you'd never. I pulled him into a hug, feeling his shoulders shake. It's okay, honey. She fooled a lot of people. Sarah made one last desperate attempt. Everything I did was for us, Danny. For our future. Your mother was trying to control you, to keep you from having the perfect life we deserved. The only thing my mother did, Daniel said firmly, was protect me from making the biggest mistake of my life. As Sarah was escorted out, still protesting, I looked around the chapel. The perfect wedding she had planned had indeed turned out to be unforgettable, just not in the way she had intended. Later that evening, Daniel and I sat on my porch at the house that had almost become part of Sarah's scheme. How did you know? He asked. About all of it. I smiled, thinking of my own mother, my grandmother, all the strong women who had taught me to trust my instincts. Sometimes, when someone tells you you're too much of something, too young, too old, too difficult, what they really mean is you're too hard to fool. Daniel nodded, understanding at last. I should have known that anyone who had a problem with you wasn't right for our family. As we sat there, I felt profound gratitude, not just for avoiding disaster, but for the chance to show my son what real family loyalty looked like. Sometimes, looking too young isn't a curse. It's just the universe's way of keeping you sharp enough to protect what matters most. And Sarah? Last I heard, she had moved to another state, probably in search of her next perfect target. But she had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a mother who refuses to act her age.